Hello learners, I am Dr. Tejasha Kalita and today I am going to discuss about skepticism of Hume. After going through this unit, you will be able to explain what skepticism is and you will be also able to distinguish between knowledge skepticism and justification skepticism. Again, we'll be able to distinguish between global and local skepticism. We'll be able to explain the role of skepticism hypothesis in Descartes' skepticism, and you'll be able to explain and evaluate different kinds of skepticism, and you'll be able to analyze the role of doubt in philosophy. Now, when we say that a person is skeptical, what is generally meant is that that person is not easily convinced and doubt any claim that is not well founded. Skepticism is also a term which is used for a philosophical school of thought. Skepticism as a school of thought has its own original in ancient Greece. We all have doubts about some areas of alleged knowledge, although these doubts will vary among persons and groups. Accordingly, philosophers and others have long debated the limits, the scopes of human knowledge. The more restricted we take the scope to be, the more skeptical we are. So, if we restrict knowledge claims to claims about our subjective experience, for example, we are very skeptical. Famous skeptical debates in philosophy have concerned knowledge of, among other things, the mind of independent world, otherwise inductive inferences, historical events, and unobservable entities countenanced by science. Now, first, we have to know what is skepticism. While most of us are skeptical about some knowledge claims, skeptical arguments in philosophy try to show that we do not know or are not justified in believing many of things we ordinarily assume we know or reasonably believe. These arguments often conclude that we do not know or are not justified in believing anything about the external world or the past or other minds. Skeptical comes in many forms. We may distinguish skepticism about knowledge from skepticism about justification. Skepticism about knowledge denies that people have or can have certain kinds of knowledge. Skepticism about justification denies that people are or can be justified in believing certain sorts of things. One can be skeptic about knowledge without being skeptic about justification. One might hold that people are justified in believing various sorts of things, but maintain that the level of justification people have for believing those things is not high enough for knowledge. One might hold, for example, that people are somehow justified in believing many things about the external world, but deny that these beliefs ever reach the level of justification needed for knowledge. Similarly, one might be skeptical about justification without being a skeptic about knowledge. Suppose, for example, one held that knowledge does not require justification but only reliably produce true belief. One might deny that beliefs of a certain kind were justified but still amounted to knowledge. One can again distinguish between global skepticism and local skepticism. So far as global skepticism is concerned, it is about knowledge denies that we do or can have any knowledge at all. If global skepticism about knowledge is true, then no one knows anything at all. But again, if global skepticism about knowledge is true, then no one knows even that this skepticism's claim is true. The local skeptic needed not deny that we have some kinds of knowledge. Such a skeptic might allow, for example, that we know our own mental states and some simple logical truths. Similar is the case with global and local skepticism about justification. As for example, we can say that if global skepticism about justification were true, no one would be justified in believing it. If global skepticism were true, then no one would have any good reason for accepting it. No one would be justified in believing any premises which support it. Now, there are different kinds of skepticism. With respect to global skepticism, there are various important schools. First, there is an ancient Pyrrhonian skepticism. So far as Pyrrhonian skepticism is concerned, this form of skepticism employs the technique instead of argument in trying to undermine claims to know. Second, there is Cartesian skepticism. And crucial in this type of skepticism is the use of skeptical hypothesis to cast doubt on much what we ordinarily think to know. And the third one is the skepticism of Hume. This kind of skepticism is put up by consideration about the limits of inductive knowledge. First, we'll discuss about Pyrrhonian skepticism. In the Hellenistic period, a kind of skepticism developed which was advocated by the Pyrrhonians. The central claim of the Pyrrhonians was that one should be advanced by philosophical thesis. They maintained that they did not know whether knowledge was possible. The most famous and Pyrrhonian skeptical was Sextus Empiricus. According to Pyrrhonian, we can claim knowledge only if we have good grounds for believing that what is exactly as we think it is or perceive it to be. But we are never aware of any object as it is independent of us. Now, so far as Pyrrhonian skepticism is concerned, we are always aware of the objects as it stands in relation to us. Therefore, we cannot know how any object rely in itself. For example, when we think of an object, we think of it as possessing the qualities which we have perceived. But the question remains whether the object has only those qualities or does it have additional qualities which are not known to us. It may also so happen that the object has fewer qualities than which we have perceived. There is no way of confirming with which are the qualities that are really had by the object. The senses cannot tell which qualities are really and which are not there in the object, as the senses cannot tell, the minds too cannot tell. St. Augustine refuted total or global skepticism on three grounds. First, skepticism is refuted by the principle of non-contradiction. According to this principle, a proposition and its contradiction cannot both be true, or one of other must be true. The proposition, the stick is bent, and it is false that the stick is bent cannot be both true in the same time. Thus, we can at least know this much, that the man is not both tall and not tall. Secondly, Augustine held that the act of doubting reveals one's existence as something absolutely certain. From the fact I am doubting, it follows automatically that I am. Finally, so far as Augustine is concerned, it is fine that he held that sense perception itself gives rudimentary kind of knowledge. According to him, deception in sense of perception occurs when one gives essence to both than the fact of appearance. As for example, in the cases of perception of bent stick immersed in water, the stick appears bent at the point when it enters the water. If we agree only to the appearances of the stick and consequently say that it looks bent, we do not commit any mistake. It is only when we say that the stick is actually bent that we commit error. After Pyrrhonian skepticism, we have to know about Cartesian skepticism. Historically, Descartes' skepticism is one of the most two influential skepticism, the other being Pyrrhonian skepticism. His doubt is something which is applied universally to all that can be doubted. Descartes discusses his skepticism in his book Meditation. Descartes was concerned with skeptical question as to the possibility of knowledge. However, he was not a skeptic. In fact, Descartes' aim was to formulate a unified science and the nature that was as certain as mathematics. His doubt or skepticism was methodic. It was methodic in the sense that Descartes employs skepticism as a method and achieving certainty. He started with doubting everything. His idea was that if everything was doubted, whatever was left that could not be doubted anymore would be absolutely certain. Then he would inquire into what it is that made it absolutely certain, such that it cannot be doubted further. This was supposed to reveal the criterion of certainty. With this criterion that he would measure that could be accepted as truth and what what to fall short of truth. To doubt every proposition, Descartes employs two skeptical hypotheses. Possibility of error that are both incompatible with what we think to know and that cannot be subjectively distinguished from normal circumstances. The first is the dream hypothesis and second is the evil demon hypothesis. Now, one can doubt everything that has been given through senses. Senses sometimes deceive us regarding the nature of things. However, here it can be objected that from it we are not supposed to conclude that we cannot have knowledge through senses. For example, it can be said that there are instances of perception regarding my knowledge about my both right now where we do not doubt our knowledge, that is, we do not think that we are deceived. But Descartes said, for all I know, I may now be dreaming. This is Descartes' dream hypothesis. It might be the case that perceptual experiences that I am having now, I am having are meant mere dream experiences only. These may look at the first sight to be capable of being deciphered easily, but let us look into it more closely. I pinch myself to ensure whether I am dreaming or not. But the next question that would arise in this case is that I am whether I am dreaming that I am pinching myself. The awareness I am having that I am awake now may also be a dream experience. There is no evidence which can conclusively tell me that my experiences are not dream but real experiences. Nothing to tell me that all the things that I see in front of me have existence outside my mind. However, the dream hypothesis is not capable in certain cases. It may be argued that even if I am dreaming, there are still many things which cannot be doubted. As for example, we can say that one cannot doubt even when one is dreaming that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Then a square can have a 4 than 4. 4 a square have more than 4 sides. This proposition seems absolutely certain to me. In other words, such propositions do not seem to be affected by doubts. Empirical propositions, one may say, are doubtful, while analytical propositions are not so. But it is possible to doubt even such analytical propositions also. Some propositions that have seemed absolutely certain to me on certain previous occasions turn out to be false later. So, in these cases also, I have the possibility of the propositions turning out to be false later, for it is possible that a deceitful and all-powerful intelligence has to program me that I find myself regarding certain proposition as absolute certainties which are as a matter of fact false. This is what Descartes' Devillemont hypothesis. The two skeptical hypotheses are incompatible with ordinary experiences and Descartes was very much aware of it. In fact, this is what Descartes wanted to show. Descartes was looking for that kind of certainty which will escape even the kinds of possibilities falsehood as presented by skeptical hypotheses. Descartes put to test everything he knew against these two possibilities singly or together. When he did that, he found that whether he had been considering as certain till that the time turned to be something he could doubt except one thing, he found that he could doubt everything save the indivisible truth of I think therefore I am, cogito ergo sum. According to Descartes, one could doubt everything, but any attempt to doubt one's existence as a thinking being is impossible because to doubt is to think and to think is to exist. What Descartes meant was that the self that doubts its existence must exist to be able to doubt in the first place. Descartes examines his single indivisible truth to find out what guarantees its certainty and saw that it is clarity and distinctness which tends a proposition in its immunity to doubt. Descartes discovers in a certainty of his own existence and essential characteristics of certain truth. Anything that was clear and distinct as his own existence would be certain. So far as Descartes is concerned, its approach to the problem of certainty and knowledge is characteristic of rationalism. Whatever may be their differences, the rationalists agrees that science experience is untrustworthy, and that certain knowledge is to be obtained by exercise of pure reason. Descartes seems to be claiming to have discovered certainty in both objective and subjective sense. When he equated existence with thinking, he claimed certainty in the objective sense, while criterion of clarity and distinctness can be considered as an example of subjective certainty. But unfortunately, Descartes' own interpretation regarding cogito ergo sum is ambiguous. If the cogito is regarded as an inference of some kind, then it can be argued that it commits the error of arguing in a circle. The I or I am is already presupposed in the I or I think. Any necessity it possesses is a matter of logic which has nothing to say about the actual existent thing. Descartes says that as long as he is doubting, the certainty of the cogito is assured. Now, there are certain occasions when he is not thinking. Does he have any guarantee that he continues to exist as a potentially thinking thing at that time also? Descartes does not give any clear explanation regarding this problem. So, after Descartes, we have finally come to the skepticism of Hume. Now, we'll see what Hume has said about the skepticism. So far as Hume is concerned, we can say that he is one of the best known philosophers who proposed skepticism in his books Treatise on Human Nature and An Enquiry Concerning Human Understanding. One important element of his skepticism is that it is motivated by considerations about the limits of knowledge about on induction. According to Hume, inductive arguments are never justified, and the central problem is how we can ever have a non-circular or non-question begging justification for our use of it. Since the time of Descartes, most philosophers have distinguished between propositions of mathematics and statements about the empirical world. Hume referred to these propositions as relations of ideas and matters of facts respectively. The first kind of proposition expresses the relation between numbers or geometrical figures. According to him, they are intuitively or demonstratively certain. The truth can be discovered by the operation of thought. It does not depend on anything of the world. Matters of facts are quite different from them. First, we can deny them without contradiction, where we cannot deny the truth of 2 and 2 make 4. Secondly, their truth seems to be founded on the relation of cause and effect. But how do we arrive at the knowledge of cause and effect? This truth, says Hume, is attained by experiences and not by a priori reasoning. It is true that we can trace particular effects back to general causes, for example, gravity. But common human curiosity does not anchor into these principles. What justifies the inferences from the conjunction of cause and effect to similar conjunction in the future? The reasoning involved here is not demonstrative, that is, it does not involve any logic. It is also not inferred intuitively. The only alternative left is that the justification lies in the supposition that the future will resemble the past. But how will we know this without arguing in circularity? To take a concrete example, let us assume that an object, say bread, exhibiting sensible qualities like color, weight, and so on, possesses secret power which is to nourish a human being or nourish us. Because, of course, a secret power has always been followed by a particular effect, nourishment in the past. We argue that eating of bread will nourish us in the future as well. There would be no contradiction in denying this, as relation of ideas is not involved here. And now, if we claim that we know that bread will nourish us when next we eat it, it is only because we are assuming that truth of the general proposition all future conjunctions of cause and effects will resemble past conjunctions of similar causes and effects. But how can this be known without begging the question? Thus, for Hume, we do not know that the future will resemble the past. What we have is just a belief and not the certainty. According to Hume, we also do not have intuition of a power of necessary connection between cause and effect. The idea we have necessary connection is derived from imagination and our experience of uniformity sequences of events. Hume's conclusion is that we can have knowledge of mathematical proposition to the statements derived from them by means of deductive inferences and the sciences, which deal with the general facts. Thus, he rules out theology, ethics, aesthetics, and metaphysics as constituting legitimate fields of knowledge. Hume himself was dissatisfied with the conclusion his conclusion of his argument led him to. But still, Hume's skepticism is regarded to be an example of superior argument. Hume distinguished firstly between the antecedent and the consequent skepticism. In the former, we start by doubting everything and then look for some certain infallible criterion to provide the basis of your knowledge. In Descartes' case, it was cogito. Hume's proposition was one of the consequent skepticism, which involved a thoroughgoing examination of the reliability of human faculties. But whether one's skepticism is of antecedent type or consequent type, Hume rejected extremism, which he regarded as self-destructive. He was aware of the consequences of the philosophers if his assumptions and arguments were followed through to their logical conclusion. So, for Hume is concerned, he thought that there is no answer to skepticism, but skepticism should be ignored outside the study. As an ordinary man, he plays a game of backgammon, converses, and marry with his friends. But when after this amusement, he returned to the philosophical speculation, they appear cold, strange, and ridiculous. So, Hume believed that we cannot help but believe skepticism to be false even when presented with most convincing arguments. We have natural or instinctive belief in the existence of external bodies, continuous selves, and real causal connection in nature. We have to believe in such entities for our daily living. But for Hume, we are dealing here with probabilities. We do not have knowledge in the strict sense. The reason for this is that Hume regards belief as a result of our natural impulses rather than as something regulated by reason. So, this is in brief in skepticism, and especially we have given emphasis on the skepticism given by David Hume. So, let us see what we have already discussed in this lecture. First, what is generally meant by skepticism is that the person is not easily convinced and doubt any claim that is not well founded. Skepticism is also a term which is used for a philosophical school of thought which has its origin in ancient Greece. Skepticism comes in many forms. We may distinguish skepticism about knowledge from skepticism about justification. Skepticism about knowledge denies that people have or can have certain kinds of knowledge. Skepticism about justification denies that people are or can be justified in believing certain sorts of things. We can again distinguish between global skepticism and local skepticism. Global skepticism about knowledge denies that we do or can have any knowledge at all. In contrast, local skepticism about knowledge holds that we do not or cannot have knowledge about some particular domain, such as knowledge about other minds, the past, or the external world. So far as Pyrrhonian skepticism is concerned, it employs technique instead of arguments in trying to undermine claims to know. According to the Pyrrhonian, we can claim knowledge only if we have good grounds of believing that what is exactly as we think it is or perceive. But We are never aware of any objects as it is independent of us. We are always aware of objects as it stands in relation to us. Therefore, we cannot know how any object really is in itself. Descartes employs skepticism as a method of achieving certainty. He started with doubt in everything. His idea was that if everything was doubted, whatever was left that could not be doubted anymore would be absolutely certain. Then he would inquire into what is that made this absolutely certain such that it cannot be doubted. This was supposed to reveal the criterion of certainty. With this criterion, then he would measure what could be accepted as truth as what would fall short of truth. Humean skepticism put up by consideration about the limit of inductive knowledge. It is motivated by consideration about the limits of knowledge based on induction. According to Hume, inductive arguments are never justifying, and the central problem is how we can ever have a non-circular or non-questioning question-making justification for our use of it. But we have natural or instinctive belief in the existence of external bodies, continuous selves, and real causal connection in nature. However, for Hume, we are dealing here with probabilities. So we do not have knowledge in strict sense. Skepticism leads to criticism of knowledge. Skepticism doubts the possibilities of knowledge, but so far as human minds is concerned, it finds it difficult to go on doubting. Human mind starts inquiring into the limits and conditions of knowledge, and inquiry into the limits of conditions of knowledge is what epistemology does. In other words, criticism of knowledge means epistemology. As such, any system of philosophy based on epistemological reflection may be called critical. The way Kant presents his analysis of process of knowledge has been described as criticism. Kant himself stated that criticism is the philosophy which criticizes and examines everything before reaching the definite judgments and finds out the limits of knowledge before trying to know anything. So far as Hume is concerned, Hume selected certain doctrines of the rationalist and certain doctrines of the empiricists and put them together into his own philosophy. He incorporated elements of rationalists and empiricists, though empiricists thought, but he changed those views to have their meaning and implications altered and created new approach, which is called critical philosophy. A priori does not mean knowledge which is explicitly present in the minds before it has begun to explain anything at all. It means knowledge which is not derived from the experience, though it makes its appearance only on the occasion of experience. The term a posteriori means known posterior to experience or known dependency of experience. Analytic judgments are those in which the predicate is contained, at least implicitly, in the concept of the subject. They are said to be a judgment because the predicate does not add to their concept of the subject anything which is not already contained in it, explicitly or implicitly. Synthetic judgments, unlike analytic judgment, affirm or deny of a subjective or a predicate which is not contained in the concept of subject. Therefore, they are called appellative or argumentative judgment because they add something to the concept of the subject. In all synthetic judgments, something is added to the concept of the subject, as connection is affirmed between predicate and subject, but in such judgment, the predicate cannot be go out of the subject by mere analysis of the subject. So this is in brief about the conception of skepticism, and we have given special emphasis to Humean concept of skepticism. I think it will be helpful for you. Thank you.